Hello, people of YouTube. It's, I think episode 10 of Fallen World, and I wanted this episode to be good. Therefore, I picked an interesting topic, but also just the topic that happened to be on my mind this week anyway. It's about light and dark, and these lyrics that I have in the description are from my favorite song, which is also about light and dark. So that's what I'm talking about today. Yeah, so what is that? What does it mean? Well, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things I could say about this. I don't even know where to begin. So I'm just gonna start by dissecting the song and we'll see where I end up. The lyrics that I have here, should I sing them? No. But only because it's the middle of the night and I'm out in the open and I don't want to wake anybody up by being noisy and singing. Maybe I could be quiet. I don't know. We don't own our heavens now, we only own our hell. And if you don't know that by now, then you don't know me that well. All my life I've been so lonely, all in the name of being holy, and still you'd like to think you know me. You keep buying stars, and you could buy up all the stars, but it wouldn't change who you are. You're still living life in the dark. It's just who you are. It's just who you are. Yeah, you know only how to own me. You know only how to own me. You're buying stars to shut out the light. We come alone and alone we die. And no matter how hard you try, I'll always belong in the sky. I'm glad I sang that because I just can't picture that being spoken. It doesn't have the same impact. I added some of the lyrics from the song that aren't written here, but anyway, you get the point. So I picked out my favorite lyrics from the song. I didn't really put them in order or anything. I mean, I did, but I'm not like I don't know. I did a little skipping around because I was just thinking about what was going to be relevant to the topic today. So, yeah. We don't own our heavens, we only own our hell. Think about how interesting it is, the idea that you can't really own something that's free because it's free. No one can own it, no one can have it. And there's so many things in the world that are not really I don't know what I'm saying. I had a point and I lost it. I was thinking about, I just watched Rise of the Guardians, and if you haven't seen that movie, it's kind of old. I saw it when it first came out, and I haven't watched it since then, but I just watched it the other night, and I was like, hey, this is actually really interesting, and it was kind of deep, and they had the two things that I really liked about it was they talked about your center and sort of like a Russian doll showing what's at the center of you. And then the other thing that I liked was that they talked about how you you have to remember to have fun and not like get so caught up in ego, basically. I mean, whether you're trying to prove that you're strong enough to win a battle or whatever it is, or you're afraid, if you just kind of let go and allow yourself to laugh and feel joy, you realize that what you have within you, what's at your center of your Russian doll, is something that can't be touched, something that can't be changed. It's something that's free, something that can't be bought. No one can own it. And it's not yours, it's not anyone's. It's you. So even though we're all unique and what we have at our core is unique, everything is connected. It has one thing in common, and that's that it's all free. It's all not based on and it's not based on fear, it's not based on control, it's not based on ego, it's not based on anything that's about, you know, fear, like trying to pull everything together and hold it together. It's just very loose and malleable. It's allowing itself to change with the flow of things, but that's the one thing that doesn't change about it. So on the surface you can change, on the surface you can become hard and stubborn, but at your core there will always be that center of freedom. And I feel like that movie was about trying to remind you that that's within you and to try and bring it out of you. Despite the fact that the world seems so dark, you can just have fun anyway. That's what it looks like at the end of the movie. And it's really interesting. But that's what got me thinking about this. And I'm gonna share a little something with you. Consider it a 10th episode special. I am kind of insane. I have this thing with my grandpa ever since I was a kid. He and I have always had a very goofy relationship because I never really let him get away with anything. Even when I was like, you know, I still needed to be wiped and I was wearing diapers. One time he was wiping me, and he's going like this. And he just made this goofy face, and I just made it right back at him. And I remember it. I remember being in the back seat of his car as maybe like 2 or 3 year old, and I took my bottle out of my mouth and I said, "What are you doing getting me stuck in a traffic jam?" And he's sitting there going, "How does he know what a traffic jam is?" So there's always been things like that, but I never let him get away with anything. I'd look at him and I'd go, "How come you have that big bald spot on the back of your head?" And it was all like, I didn't think I was being mean, but I would say a lot of things, and he'd go, "Hey, how come you're being so nasty? How come you're being so mean?" And I started imitating him, and I started to mock the way that he talked, and I do his voice, but I was trying to be accurate. I was trying to do a real imitation of his voice, and I wrote this song. I must have been like 4 years old or 3 years old, and it was, "Little body, do-do, why so nasty, do-do? Why must you be super mean to me? Little body, do-do, don't be nasty, do-do. Don't be mean to me, and only me. Little buddy, you're being a meanie to me and only me. Why are you being mean when you could be nicer? You're being very mean to me and only me, little buddy, do-do." And it just kind of goes on like that on an infinite loop, and the lyrics are different every time, but they're all something along the lines of, "Why are you being mean?" And it always starts with, "Little buddy, why so nasty?" So I wrote this song, and it just was such a weird positive spin on him accusing me of being mean, and I just turned it into this upbeat little song. And over time, as I got older, I just fully turned him into a character, and I gave him his own YouTube channel, and I ended up branching off into different versions of this character. One of them is the YouTube version, which is like really from his perspective. It's almost like, you know, in this fictional planet of that I named Babylon, and he spelled Babbelon, and it's a play on the word babble because he babbles a lot. So Babylon, and I was so proud of that name, and I was so proud of everything that I came up with because I wrote a whole storyline for this character and why he had a YouTube channel, how he had a YouTube channel broadcasting from this other planet, and I came up with this species of papas and meanies, and all the papas had their last name was Papa, and the meanies' last names are Meanie, and the papas are really naive and gullible, and they'll believe anything. So meanies masquerade as papas all the time, and they don't even question it, and the the Papa is what I called him. His full name was the Sample Papa. His first name was the, middle name Sample, last name Papa, and he always called me Little Buddy. So his grandson, who was secretly a meanie, went by Little Buddy Papa as his full name. And sometimes it was popular to name people after body parts. Like the Papa's sister was Ann Nee Papa, A-N, and then the middle name Knee. So some people would go by their first and middle name, like Little Buddy didn't go by Little, he went by Little Buddy. Annie didn't go by Ann, she went by Annie. But the Papa went by the. So he would always introduce himself as the, because he didn't want to introduce himself as the Sample. And a sample on Babylon is a body part. it's it's hard to explain. It's this body part that is like, it almost looks like a pawn in chess, where it's just like a little cone with a circle on top of it, a sphere, and it's invisible. You can see your own sample, but they all the papas have them. Meanies have benadals, but papas don't know that because meanies don't talk about it. Papas love to brag about how good it feels to rub their sample. And then I started saying weird stuff like that, talking about rubbing samples and trying to sound creepy. And that's what branched off into this other version of Papa, which is the Creepy Papa. And this one is the one that my family hears around the house all the time because it's kind of like my version of That's What She Said. If they ever say something that sounds like something I hear it like, oh, I'm gonna stick that in the oven. I go, I know something I'd like to stick in, and I'll say stuff like that all the time. And the first time my grandpa heard me do it, he didn't know I was doing this. For like a year he didn't know. And one time my grandma said to me when my grandpa was sitting next to me, I'm gonna make some pulled chicken, do you want some? And I go, I know some chicken I'd like to pull. And the look he gave me was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, how have you not heard me do that yet? But this was years ago, so it's a thing that I just do and everybody knows about it. But this creepy version of Papa, then there was also the movie version, because I wrote this movie, and I connected it where it was like the Papa from Babylon was actually a dream taking place in the head of the movie Papa, and then this creepy Papa is its own thing. So this creepy Papa, the other night I kind of made up this whole story because I was just bored and I was talking to myself and thinking. Like I said, I'm sharing something with you. So this one is weird, but like I said, I was thinking about light and dark, so it kind of factored into this. It was the Papa was talking to Little Buddy, and he was being creepy and saying really creepy things. Oh, Little Buddy, and Little Buddy, me. I think maybe he wasn't. I think this was Tristan. It was just me being myself. So I was being myself, and I was responding to him like, "Get away from me! You're being so creepy. I'm gonna call the cops." And then he starts revealing all this information. He's like, he's older than Jesus, and he's been around since the beginning of time. And because I think I said something like, you're old, and it's weird that you're saying stuff like this when you're old. And he goes, you don't even know how old I am. And then he started telling me how old he was, and he goes, but it's okay because we're the same age. And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, we're the same entity split in half. And I'm like, you know, we're like everything in the universe is part of us. It's connected to us. And I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? So what he explained to me was that the universe basically had light and dark, and the light was separated, and they're their own entities. And he believed that I was the dark and he was the light. And I'm standing there thinking, okay, clearly, if this is true, I'm the light, because there's no way it's you. And then he started proving it, and he was using magic, and then I remembered how to use my magic, but I lost my memories, and he was like, I took your memories away, and I made you forget all about who you really are and everything, because you learned something. And he didn't tell me this, I had to get it out of him, but I figured out that I learned something that he didn't want me to remember, and that's why he took my memories away. So I didn't remember how to use my powers or how to get my memories back or anything, and I was helpless without my memories, and he wouldn't give them back to me. But it got to the point where I was trying to fight him, and he was overpowering me, but then I just wanted to die, so I grabbed a knife and I was gonna cut my throat. And he was like, no, don't do that. And I said, why? And he goes, because you'll take the whole universe with you. When you inhabit that body, you have to abide by the laws of whatever form you take. So if you, for example, transform into a bug and I step on you, the whole universe is going to cease to exist. So, you know, you have to be careful. Don't hurt yourself. And he didn't want me to do this, so I'm like, oh, I have leverage now. So it turned out that, like, he said that everybody, everything in the universe, every blade of grass, every human had a piece of both of us in them. They both had the light and the dark from each of us, so that they're all connected to us in a way. Excuse me. So if one of us goes, everyone else is going to come with it. So he didn't want me to kill myself. Well, it turned out he was lying, because what he didn't want me to remember was that we're actually not the same entity, split in half. We are... It's harder to explain than that, but what I learned was that I can't kill myself. I can't just cease to exist. It's not that simple, but he can. He can die, and the world will still go on. If he dies, I will live, but the reverse isn't true. So he didn't want me to do that and find out that I actually am more powerful than him. And the reason for that is because he isn't a separate entity, but he also isn't the same. What he is deprived, because the dark isn't something separate from the light. The dark is just an empty light bulb. The dark is just lacking in energy. It's missing it. It's starving for it. But what it doesn't understand is that it can't be filled by taking. You can't be in a state of fear and panic trying to take all the light that you can, because you'll never be full. Because what you do is you keep drinking and drinking and drinking, trying to get full. But it's like drinking sand when you're dehydrated. You're always going to be thirsty. You're always going to want more, because what you're doing when you're taking that light is you're turning it into darkness by taking it, because it's free. It's something that's pure. It can't be taken. So you're never really going to get it. You're a bottomless pit. So you have to work on patching up your own holes before you start trying to fill your cup, so to speak. And that's why the dark is just, it represents chaos, it represents confusion, it represents fear, mainly. And that's why there's all sorts of inconsistency and dishonesty. The Papa was lying and trying to manipulate me, and doing this all out of fear, trying to have more power, but was never full, was never satisfied, because he believed that he needed to be filled. He wasn't accepting something that was free. He was trying to take it, and then he was never getting it. So the Papa, in this case, represented the human incarnation of this darkness. And that's I've never finished it. I never finished how it ends because it's always going to be an ongoing thing where I just pick up this weird argument and revelation and I add to it and I make it weirder, and it's just something I do when I'm bored. So that's what I was thinking about, and I realized that it's based in truth. Obviously, there's no Papa and little buddy to have, you know, like these physical examples of it, but it's really basically what it is. And I talk a lot about faith, and I don't care if you have faith in, I don't know, like the sun or the moon. You can give it whatever image you want, whatever name you want. All you need to know is that there's something that's unchangeable, untouchable, and protected within you that will always be there, and that it's free. It's not for anyone to take. So when you realize that you have that within you, that's when you're going to be full. If you keep trying to take it because you think you're empty, because you think you need to, that's when you're going to end up kind of on the darker side of things. But it is true that everyone has light and dark within them. It's true that those two, the Papa and little buddy, are connected to everything. But it's not true that the light couldn't survive without the dark. I think it's just kind of a given that they're both always going to be there, not because one depends on the other, but because it's just kind of like a law of nature that there will always be an opposite. I call it the law of opposites, or the law of duality, because I think it's when something is created, there will automatically be an opposite, because I think that there's always infinite possibilities and infinite potential. And one of the most amazing things in the universe is free will. And without free will, nothing is real. Without free will, it's all just a movie playing out that's eventually going to end, and then it'll all have been pointless. Free will is what makes it a real experience. And with free will comes infinite possibilities. So there are infinite things that could happen, and I think that there are sort of alternate realities where everything has happened in every possible way that it could, because I think everything has to exist. So there will always be light and dark, but it's not true that the light needs the dark. It's just kind of there. So what is dark, though, really? Dark can be a number of things, and I think a lot of people have a misconception that the dark is always bad. It just depends what you're talking about, really, because nothing is inherently good or bad. It's not, nothing is as simple as that, because the light is within everything, and what darkness really is just a lack of light. So it's not that it's bad, it's just something different, something less fortunate. But there's all sorts of versions of darkness that's first acknowledged. Things that we perceive as dark aren't always dark. We have to remember that, especially as humans, we have both light and dark within us. And if we're constantly trying to snuff out the dark, we're going to ultimately snuff out the light, because we're not being honest with ourselves. And that's coming from a place of fear, which is dark. So in trying to defeat the dark, you're ironically helping it, feeding it. You have to nurture it. If you've ever seen the movie The Babadook or the Babadook, the pronunciation of that, by the way, if there's one thing that's clear, it's the second half of the word, because it's supposed to rhyme with the word look, and they say that if it's in a word or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook, and a lot of people pronounce it Babadook, and I'm like, if it's in a word or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook? How do you draw that conclusion? They don't say it like that in the movie, and yeah, they have Australian accents, but it's stupid. People are stupid, and it always bugs me when people say things that are just not right. But you could say Babadook, or sorry, you could say Babadook or Babadook, but you got to be saying Dook either way, because it's got to rhyme with the word look and book. But if you've seen the movie, it's basically a metaphor for grief and how there's certain things that you just can't make it go away. You can't pretend it away. But if you acknowledge it and you deal with it in a healthy way, then it won't take over your life and ruin your life. And I think that's a good example of what I'm talking about right now. So yeah, let's talk about these song lyrics though. We don't own our heavens now, we only own our hell. And if you don't know that by now, then you don't know me that well. I feel like that is a perfect, it's almost like it's coming from someone who is kind of in touch with who they really are, and they're not trying to beg for anything, they're just making a statement. All my life I've been so lonely, all in the name of being holy. That statement is really interesting because I feel like being holy could mean so many things. It could be about religion. It could be about trying to be good outside of religion, trying to be light and all love and light and everything, but you're lonely. And maybe it could mean genuinely just actually taking care of yourself and being healthy and doing actual light work, which also comes with acknowledging darkness and doing shadow work, which I've talked about before on my channel, which is basically just reflection. It's asking yourself hard questions and facing hard truths about yourself, acknowledging things that you've said and done that you maybe aren't proud of, and acknowledging the parts of yourself that aren't all perfect, the human parts, because you having a human experience are battling between light and dark, and you have to acknowledge that you're not always going to be perfect. Perfect is, it doesn't exist. Perfection is things just being what they are. Everything is perfect. So, all my life I've been so lonely. What you realize when you start to step into that that truth, you know, it sounds like an old soul thing to say. Like, you come into the world and right away you know what's up already. You've been here 100 times, and you don't really connect with anybody because they're all still learning stuff that you've already learned, and you're here to learn something else. And because you're so far ahead, there aren't a whole bunch of other people who are at the same pace as you, who you can connect with. But they exist. It's just not likely that you find them. So you will find yourself feeling like, all my life I've been so lonely, because nobody else seems to see the world the way you do. And it feels like you're awake, but everyone else is asleep. And that is a really lonely feeling. And I did a video on loneliness. I forgot what I called it, but I think I called it Hiding from Life. And I used lyrics from a song called The Beacon. And the bridge of that song is, let me stand by you, the honor is mine, let me stand by you, loneliest light. And that's sort of about this same type of person who just feels very isolated and lonely. And that's again touched on in this song. So, and still you'd like to think you know me. That's the other thing, is that everyone wants to believe that they know you. They look at you and they develop an opinion about you, and they think that they've got you all figured out, but they're not interested in seeing all the different parts of you. And nobody really knows anybody as long as there's ego in the way. The only way to truly know someone is to just understand that you're never going to fully know them, and to see them as a vessel of infinite potential, and to see them for what they're trying to do, and what they love, what brings what they do that brings people joy, to focus on the positive things like that. And I mean, to also acknowledge the negative things, but not to focus on them, because that's not who we are. It's just what we do sometimes, because we're imperfect and we make decisions out of fear, but we are not those decisions. And we're also not our bodies, but people are shallow. So that's why I like that line. All my life I've been so lonely, and still you'd like to think you know me. You keep buying stars, and you could buy up all the stars, but it wouldn't change who you are. You're still living life in the dark. It's just who you are. Now, this is about how you can't get full from stealing. You can't be in this constant state of neediness, taking and taking and taking. Because if you get comfortable feeling needy, you're never going to be full. So you have to learn to be grateful for what you already have and acknowledge what's already there, instead of getting comfortable feeling like you're missing something and desperately trying to take it. And then you develop an I'll be happy when mentality, or you just go really dark and you end up getting so lost that you don't even know who you are anymore, like at all. There's no connection to who you are. You're like that Russian doll, but there's so many layers that it would take a jackhammer to break down to the center. And you're in a world that doesn't really focus on that. It doesn't tell you the things that you need to hear. It doesn't make you feel loved or like it's safe to open up and be vulnerable. We rehabilitate people by sending them to prison. It's insanity, but it's an insane world to live in. And if you are if you're considered insane in an insane world, then you're actually sane. So you know only how to own me. You're buying stars to shut out the light. We come alone, and alone we die. And no matter how hard you try, I'll always belong in the sky. So you know only how to own me means that in any situation, when you're talking to someone, you know someone, do you really know them, or do you know how to own them? Because even with people that we think we love, we're often very possessive. When they're leaving, when they die, when whatever happens that pulls them away from our life, in relationships, especially romantic relationships, we get very, very possessive, and we forget to appreciate people for who they are and be grateful for the time that we got of theirs, because time is very valuable, and it's also an illusion. Time is infinite. There's nothing but time. So you're never going to run out of time to be with that person. But that's why you don't need to be so clingy. That's why you don't need to be so desperate, because there's no such thing as goodbye. There's only goodbye for now. And you never know, because the universe is infinite and time is infinite. You never know when you're going to see that person again, but it's a guarantee that you will, because we're all connected. So there's goodbye for now, and that's all that there ever is. It's important to be able to let people go when they're ready, and be humble about it and be grateful, but we get very possessive. And we mostly think of people that way, as someone we don't want to lose. And most of the relationships we have in our life, whether it's family or romantic or just, even acquaintance, just like coworkers, anybody, they anybody, even just a stranger on the street, most people who know you on any level, they think of you, they look at you, and they think of you as someone who's in their life rather than someone who is just crossing paths with them. And we're all kind of here in the same infinite place on our own journeys, but like going our own way, doing our own thing. And sometimes we mingle, we cross paths, but it's not like this is my life and you're in it. And, you know, like people think so, like put themselves at the center of the world and think that everything is about them. So there's a lot of me importance and not a lot of we importance. And that's why that's why people aren't happy, because they're not acknowledging that true joy comes from selflessness, when you just do something because you're not expecting anything in return, but you're doing it because it's helpful to other people. You're doing it because you know that you would want someone to do that for you, or you'd be grateful if someone did that for you. And when you start giving and you start thinking less about yourself and more about how you can give to the world, that's when you're being your most authentic, and that's when you're feeding your light, and you're actually going to be happier. So this last line, we come alone and alone we die, and no matter how hard you try, I'll always belong in the sky. This one is amazing. It's true. We come alone and alone we die, because when we get here, we're alone. We spend the first 9 months of our life alone. Then we come into the world, and there's all these people that are there. And death is the same thing. When you die, you're alone. And then as soon as you get to the other side, there's all these people that are waiting for you. All your ancestors and your guides and your angels, and everyone is just there ready to welcome you. And you don't have to believe that. I'm not here to shove any beliefs down your throat. But most of what I say is based on my thoughts and not based on something that I believe in. So everything I believe in, I have a lot of reasons to believe in it, but I understand that I can't convince anybody of anything. So the only thing that I try to focus on here is just what I can convince people of and what just makes sense. So when I say things like that, don't like say, oh, he believes that, well, now I'm going to discredit him and I'm not going to take anything he says seriously. Like, just keep an open mind, basically. So we come alone and alone we die, and no matter how hard you try, I'll always belong in the sky. That last line is so powerful, because it's what I've been talking about this whole time, about your center, that metaphor that they used in Rise of the Guardians. It's completely untouchable. It's invincible. And that's what that means. No matter how hard you try, you can't change who I am and where I belong. And I'm in touch with that truth, and that's faith. That's God. That's what you believe in. That's what God is. God is whatever you have faith in, that makes you believe in yourself and who you really are. And then you're being your most authentic self. You're coming from a giving place. You're not being selfish. Sad to say, most people who believe in God are really quite fearful. And there are some people who have religious beliefs that are actually pretty beautiful in their practices, where they're helpful. But all the mainstream religions, they're tainted by capitalism. They're tainted by greed and all these things that we created to control each other. So we're not teaching people how to have healthy spiritual beliefs. And everyone is basically just brainwashed. So it's that's why you feel alone, and that's why I like that line, we come alone and alone we die, because it touches on all my life I've been so lonely. It's this theme of like feeling like you're the only one who sees things. And then there's this other side of people, these I call them the paranoid people, because I feel like there's commercial versions of everything. And by commercial, I just mean what they want you to think, something that isn't really harmful to this oppressive system, but something that actually helps it, something that feeds it. And the way that it's set up, it's basically anything that comes out, anything that's popular, anything that people like, they can simply taint it and turn it into something that supports them, because it's always about money. That's all they have to do, is involve money somehow. And they just have to keep people blind, keep people distracted, keep people fighting with each other. So I have the commercially woke and the paranoid. So that's basically liberals and conservatives. So the commercially woke are people who, are basically just following the big direction. All the directions that they're going, they're, going to rallies. And let me give you an example. It's the type of person who hears about some giant chemical spill and says, "Aw, I'll do my part. I'll make sure to opt out of getting a plastic straw. Like, I'll bring my metal straw," and then they think that they've done their part. Unfortunately, a lot of vegans are like this. There are some good vegans out there, but most vegans don't even understand that being vegan doesn't really do that much. Like, the stuff that you're buying is still contributing to a lot of harm and damage because it's being sold to you. Like, it's being distributed in mass amounts because vegans are a whole audience, they're a whole group to distribute to. And when you start distributing in mass amounts, you're not really doing it in an honest or harmless way. So there's really no way around it. You're contributing to someone else's pain one way or another. And the only way around it is to just basically live completely off the grid. And then you're kind of being indifferent. Then you're not doing anything. You're not hurting anyone, but you're not helping anyone either. So it's sort of like the bully who just stands by and watches someone else get bullied, doesn't help them. And sometimes you just have to get your hands dirty to help people out. But I think the most important thing to remember is that it doesn't matter. Nothing really matters. People get way too caught up. This is how we get sucked into the vortex of fear that leads to darkness, is that we think things matter that don't really matter. That's how it gets you. That's how fear controls you, because when you think something matters and you feel responsible for it, you're not really balanced anymore. You're now panicked. So you're going to be trying to do things, and you're going to be so proud of yourself that you're going to end up being really arrogant and bragging. Most vegans are very, very arrogant, and they shame people who aren't vegan because they think that they're a superior being. And it's really irritating. If you've ever known a vegan that was like that, I'm so sorry. Nobody deserves to be talked down to. Nobody deserves to be shamed. Even if it's someone who is doing something that's blatantly horrible, you don't deserve to be talked down to, because as horrible as that thing is, you have to understand that you could have done it just as easily, because you have just as much capacity for darkness as they do. They didn't make great decisions, but that doesn't mean that you should judge them or feel superior to them. It just means they need love, and they don't know where to get it. They're lost, and that's sad. But you have love within you, and you have to find it instead of stooping to their level and depriving yourself of that by going dark and getting arrogant. So yeah, it's a shame how quickly we lose ourselves, but it's you're still living life in the dark. It's just who you are. I mean, that's really, like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's a ton of ways to interpret that. And on a surface level, it sounds like it's not true, because it isn't just who you are. You're not the dark. But there's other ways to interpret it. I came up with one earlier and I forgot what it was, but I remember thinking, oh yeah, that actually is true. You know only how to own me. You're buying stars to shut out the light. And that's basically what it is. It's about, I like that this song is called Buy the Stars, and I like that it's about buying, and it kind of touches on capitalism a little bit and how everything is tainted by that. Even things that are good ideas. I hear in Christianity so many true messages are being taught and good points, and I'm like, yeah, this is true. But then I look at Christians and I'm like, how did you draw that conclusion? And a lot of Christians are conservative and they get real paranoid. It's real windy right now. But like what I was talking about, how you know how you think that you're awake and everyone else is asleep. There's a lot of people who think that and they're wrong, because it's not that they're seeing things as they really are and nobody else is. It's that they are so afraid of reality that they've built their own reality to convince themselves that they're seeing the truth. They've gotten so caught up in the darkness that they've completely lost sight of who they are. And the way to spot these people, and the way to know if you are this type of person, is to ask yourself one simple question: what are your values? Are you someone who puts being right over being kind? And most of these people are. Most of these people are very unpleasant to deal with. They'll laugh at you, they'll mock you, they'll insult you, and they'll treat you like you are lesser than because they think that they know more than you and you're such an idiot. And that's just messed up. But the other side does it too. The commercially woke, the liberals, the ones who want to, like, you know, the vegans, and the ones who are just absolutely convinced that they're doing the world a favor by gatekeeping things like, you know, slurs and you know, potentially harmful words, and certain things that you just don't do and you just don't say, and they gatekeep this stuff, and they attack and shame anyone who does anything wrong, and they get canceled, and none of it is authentic. None of it is coming from a genuine place of love and compassion. It's all about how you're right and the other people are wrong. And the thing about liberals is that often what they're saying is a lot closer to the truth than what the conservatives believe. But neither of them are really doing it right. And honestly, they both have good points. Like that, I've seen both of them say things that I'm like, yeah, that's totally true. But the problem is that they're such opposing forces that neither of them are ever going to see that. So nothing happens, and it's a shame. But yeah. Anyway, I've gone on for quite some time. This is a 10th episode special, so it's okay. But I'm pretty happy with everything I said. I'm gonna wrap this up. So, in conclusion, if you ever feel like you're not doing well enough, just remember that nothing really matters, because no matter how hard you try, I'll always belong in the sky. And remember that you're not alone, that we're all connected, and that even if you don't believe it, there is a whole I can't think of the word. Team. Let's just go with team for now. There's a whole team of people out there who are watching over you and supporting you, and it's driving me nuts that I can't think of the word I was looking for. But they're there, and they'll always be there. The light is always on your side, because the light is always going to be within you. You're never going to completely snuff it out as long as you're alive. Because if you became completely one way or the other, you wouldn't even be human anymore. As long as you're alive, you have the potential for light and dark. So never forget that, and that's why you should never judge anyone. Because on one half, you have to remember you always have the potential for light, but in not judging anyone, you have to remember that you also have the potential to be wherever they are. And you're never going to be completely above that. as long as you're human. So, yeah, I think I've said everything. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week, and hopefully this was interesting and or helpful. I hope the Papa stuff didn't weird you out. Maybe you thought it was interesting. Maybe you think I'm nuts. I am nuts. But you probably are too. You know, isn't it true that all the best people are crazy?